Hello and welcome. In today's video, we'll talk about data visualization. Let's get started. So what is data visualization? Every day, many businesses generates more data on sales revenue, marketing performance, customer interaction, inventory levels, production metrics, staffing levels, costs, and other KPIs, which stands for key performance indicators. But with so much data to shift through, it can be difficult for people to see the story it tells behind. Data visualization helps you to turn all that data into easily understood, visually compelling, and useful business information. By tapping into external data sources, today's data visualization tools don't simply let you see your KPIs more clearly, they unify the data and apply AI-driven analytics to reveal relationships between your KPIs, the market, and the whole system. So the data visualization brings data to life, making you the master storyteller of the insights hidden within your numbers. Through live data dashboards, interactive reports, charts, graphs, and other visualization techniques helps users develop powerful business insight quickly and effectively. Now we're going to talk about how to drive your better decision-making capabilities with data visualization. With stunning rich visuals can be great tools for communicating ideas. The end benefit of data visualization is its ability to drive better decision-making capabilities. Let's look at some of the fewer ways of data visualization which helps in strategic decision making. We'll create dashboards for each of these areas. The first point I want to talk about is called as see the big picture. There's a clear picture of performance buried within the transaction, interaction, process, and behavioral data stored in your system. Data visualization allows you to recognize the broader context and the higher level scenario within it. As a result, you will notice trends and spot patterns you won't be able to see if you were looking at the numbers on their own. The second point I want to drive here is called identify the significance from the data. Bringing visual clarity to the story told within your data helps you identify insights that lead to better decision making, planning, strategies, and actions. How is your business performing? What needs to be modified? And where should you focus your resources? The ability to understand the significance of your data drives more effective operations and decisions. Third point is making informed decisions. With concrete numbers and tangible insights, you can be confident your decisions are backed by data. Having clear insights into performance metrics empowers you with the knowledge and arms you with the tools to make the right decisions at the right time. Track trends over time. Once you have established a baseline, trends will begin to emerge. Track progress, spot trends, and begin using your insights to drive informed strategic decisions. It can even help you to forecast future trends. As you build your trends, shift in pattern indicates if things drift off track, allowing you to immediately address any sign of lowered performance. So in this section, we are going to use Walmart dataset and we will create visualization using this dataset. So let's move on. So in the first visualization, we'll talk about how to create the big picture. In this section, we will look at the card visual, the KPI visual, creating a horizontal slicer, the Gauss visual, and grouping visual interaction. So let's get to them one by one. So let's input the data now. I'm going to go to get data and we have data in Excel book. So I'm going to click on Excel workbook. And this is where my data is. So I'm going to import it. Yes, I have got 4 sheets, balance sheet. So this is how the balance sheet looks like. You have cash flow. You have financial ratios, and then the income. So I'm going to say transform data. Okay, we have got all the tables here. Okay, now if you see here, the data is not having the header. The header is added as one of the rows, as if header is being treated as the data. So I'm going to say use first row as header. Okay, so it became header. Similarly, financial ratio, I'm going to say use first row as header, cash flow, use first row as header, balance sheet, using first row as header. The first visual that we'll see today is called card visual. So I'm going to use a financial ratio for that. We'll create the card video. So I'm going to say close and apply. All the data is available to us now. Now we are ready to build the report. The first step we'll do is we'll use a theme. So let's go to view and select theme of your choice. I'm going to select this particular theme. Let's now continue to build the visuals. So let's now create our first card. So this is the card visual here. I'm going to click on it. So this is the card that has appeared. So I'm going to drag it to the extreme right. Now here I want to represent the data from 2022 year. So I'll select this. I'm going to use specific ratio. So I'm going to drag it here. So once we drag it, you can see all the metric appearing here. So let's say I want to add here book value per share. Okay, so you got book value per share here. Now, the title here that you have is says sum of 2022. That's not right. We'll say book value per share. So I'll drop it down and I'll say rename. So this becomes book value per share. So we got book value per share. Now, if you want to format the shape and size, okay, so you have an option here called format your visual. So I'm going to go to general. So you have title, right? So you can switch on the title, you can have effects, properties. So in properties, you have height and width. So if you want to adjust the height and width, you can do it from here. So I can say height is 200. And let's make it width also as 220. The width became 220. So that we can now move a little bit this size as well, right side as well. So this is the height. Then you have position, where the card is being placed. And you have other advanced features as well. So we have two important member here, call out value and category label. So if you want to make any changes, the way it looks, you can go to the visual option here and click on callout value. You can change the format. Let's say I want to reduce the font size. I want to change the color of it to, let's say, red. You can do that. And then you collapse it. If you want to change the text or the visuals of the label, so expand it. And let's say you expand the label here. The screen looks better. And if you want to change the font size and color, you can do it from here. Okay, so I think we have managed one card. And if you want to have multiple cards, so simply select this and do Control C. We'll copy it and we'll keep pasting. And then we can drag it. So again, I'm going to copy and paste and drag it. Let's have five such cards. So this is book value per share. Here we go and let's select current ratio. And we'll have to change the field here. So we'll say current ratio. Then here we go and we'll use gross margin. Let's look at EBITDA margin or maybe gross margin. We'll say gross margin, and here I'm going to rename it to gross margin. Here I'm going to say asset turnover. We'll rename to asset turnover. And finally, the fifth one, let's add one more metric. We'll call it as net profit margin. Sounds good. And we need to rename the value here. So it is net profit margin. So this is how you can add multiple cards. You can select the value that you want to display there. You can give a label. You can format the label. You can format the value, okay, using the visuals. And you can also format the way the general cards appear, the shape, size, using the format page. Data looks good. Let's make some minor adjustment here. So for example, when you talk about gross margin, and you can see you have decimal places. So let's make it one decimal place here. And same thing we'll do for others as well. Asset turnover, one decimal place. Current ratio, one decimal place. Book value per share, will make it one decimal place. So this is how you can adjust the decimal places. So this is how you can add cards to your visualization using the data that you have imported into Power BI. So we have seen how to create card visuals. In this video, we'll look at how to create a KPI visual. So KPI stands for Key Performance Indicator. So KPIs are visual measures of your performance. Supported by a specific calculated field, a KPI is designed to help users quickly evaluate the current value and the status of a metric against a defined target. The KPI gauges the performance of the value defined by a base measure against a target value, also defined by a measure or by an absolute value. A KPI is a quantifiable measurement for gauging business objectives. For example, the sales department of an organization might use a KPI to measure monthly gross profit against projected gross profit. The accounting department might measure monthly expenditures against the revenue to evaluate cost. And a human resource department might measure quarterly employee turnover. Each of these is an example of KPI. Various business professionals frequently group KPIs together in a performance scorecard to obtain a quick and accurate historical summary of business success or to identify a particular trend. So when do we use a KPI? So KPIs are a great choice. One, to measure progress and to answer the questions like, what am I ahead or behind on? Second, to measure distance to a goal. Answers the question like, how far ahead or behind am I? Okay, so now let's move on to Power BI and we'll create our first KPI card. So see here, KPI visual. We'll just double click on it. We will move this along with the visual card. So I'm going to resize it. Okay. Now, as I said earlier, when you click here, you will see three different options here. You have value, which talks about the value that we want to display, the trend axis, the period for which we want to show the trend, and finally the target. So against what we want to compare the value. Okay, so for this exercise, I'm going to take our income data. So we have this here. I'm going to put year 2022 data on value. So I want to compare the data 2022 along with the target value. So I'm going to put this target 2022 column here on the target. Okay, so the trend we want is for revenue. So I'm going to bring revenue here. So I put all these three information, right? But how will Power BI know which metric I want to compare? So that's where I'll go here in the filter, and I'm not going to say all. Okay, so we have revenue, we have margins, and we have a lot of other metric. We don't want to do it on all. So I'm going to select only the revenue from here. So I'll scroll down and click on revenue. So see, revenue has come. So this revenue is 572K and the goal is 560K. In fact, the data is in million, so it is 572K million. That's how we should read it. Okay, so the data has come here. Now it's all about cleaning the data. So I'll go and click on format your visual. And I'm going to click on general here. So see, you have title, effects, header icons. Let's start with properties. So properties looks fine. I don't think we need to change it. Now, title. So we can get rid of title here. So I've removed the title. Or if you want to edit it, we can edit the title. Let's say we put here revenue and revenue target for 2022. Looks good. You can change the heading. You can make it little bold. We can increase the font size. No, I think 16 is good. If you want to change the color of the font, you can obviously change the color using this option. No, dark doesn't look good. We'll make it something light. You have background color as well. So you can make it white or little grayish. Looks good maybe, right? And let's center it. Text wrap is not happening, so this is fine. You want to see the effects? Okay, so this is the color of the metric here. Transparency is fine. Shall we increase? Okay, that's fine. Visual border is off. If you want to switch it on, you can switch it on. Shadow we don't want. Header icons. I think this is all fine. Okay, so I think in general, data looks good. Now, let's go to the visual here. So call out value. Call out value is too big for the box, so we can reduce the size a little bit. Okay, we can change the font number of values that is coming to. We can change the number of values after decimal. Then this is center, this is fine. Display unit will make it million. So it has come to 0.57 million. Or if you want, you can increase it to 1000. And we can decrease this decimal value to one place maybe. Now you can format the icons. You can increase the size of the icons maybe. I think it looks good now. The trend axis, high is good, obviously. This is revenue. So higher the revenue, better it is. So we'll say green as high and red as bad color. Anyway, we have crossed the goal. That's why it's appearing in green, which is good. Let's look at the target label. This label, I think we can make a little bigger, I guess. So let's make it a little bigger. Yes. Font color, if you want to change, you can change the font color. Okay, and label is goal. You can say go or you can say target. Let it be goal itself for now. Okay, so date is off. Let's see what happens when switch on the date. It is the metric that is appearing here. And you can switch it off because anyway we have the appropriate header. So we don't need to make revenue appear again. So I think we have set all the data here and it looks good. So yes, so we have completed our another visual card here, which is KPI. So yes, this completes our KPI visual. I will stop here and let's save this visual now. I'm going to say save. Okay, now we'll see how slicers work in Power BI. Slicers and filters in Power BI may look like they do exact same thing, and in many cases they can accomplish same task, but understanding the subtle differences between the two can bring your dashboards to the next level, especially if you are sharing them. But what are slicers? The slicers are visualizations on a Power BI canvas that allows users to refine the data for themselves easily. Filters are for developers to refine specific visuals, entire pages, or whole workbook before sharing the dashboards with end users. First and foremost, a slicer is a user-friendly way of refining the data on the canvas by a dimensional column. Users of the dashboards select a value from a list by which to slice the data. Another thing to note about slicer is that they are also a visualization type, which means two things. First, that they need to be added to the canvas from the visualization panel, and second, because they are visualization, the data behind the visualization will be updated upon refreshing the dashboards, which could have performance implications depending on the size of the data set. So let's take an example here. I'm going to click on the slicer. This is the slicer visual. I'm going to double click on it. So we got a slicer here. Now, I also want to associate a bar graph with slicer. So I'm going to go and select bar graph and I'll put it here. Okay. Now, in the bar graph, I will add, I'll go to the income table and let me add a data from 2022. So now you see a bar graph is added on the canvas, on the dashboard. Now I'm going to go to slicer. In slicer, I will add the annual data column. Okay, all these values appear here. And you keep changing here. Let's say if I click on a bit, see? Now, the KPI dashboard that we had created earlier is also from the income table. And this bar graph is also from income table. So they too got linked to slicer automatically. Without we doing anything, both bar graph and this KPI card got linked to the slicer. That's the beauty of slicer. Okay, now let's say I do not want to disturb this KPI. Okay, so what I'll do is I will delink it. I will remove the interaction from this slicer. So I'll just go and bring it here for now and go and click on format. Here you have edit interaction. I click here. Now you see this shows these options. Okay, this option shows that the interaction is available. Now, if I want to delink KPI card, I will simply go and click on none here. Okay, this means that there is now no interaction between this selected visual, which is our slicer, and this KPI. And now I go and put it back in its place. Okay, now let's see, let's click on slicer here. Okay, see, the KPI is not getting changed. But when we click on this KPI is not getting impacted. But when we click on the metric here inside the slicer, the bar graph changes. Okay, so now they have so many values here, and we don't want to display all the values. Let's display only the gross margin and the operating margin. So I'll go here on the filter, and I'm going to select gross profit. I'm going to select operating income, and I say revenue. Now you see we had selected only 3 metric, and these 3 metric are here. Okay, so now this slicer will only show these 3 metric for us, and if I click on gross profit, the bar graph is showing the gross profit. Operating income will be shown here. You can also change the appearance of slicers, the color, background. So we can go to this, format your visual, and these are the options again you have. You have slicer settings, vertical list, you can make it tiled, you can make it drop down. So you have all, and then you can select from drop down revenue or operating income. So let's say I want to keep it as drop down here. So I'll bring it down, and maybe this bar graph I can make little bigger. Okay, now coming back to the formatting of slicer here. Okay, let's click on the format, click on the slicer, yes, and then come to the format your visual. Slicer header is on. Okay, you can change the appearance of the values here. I can make it as bold. Then on general, you can see the properties. You can see the height, width. You can see the effects, background. Let's say I'll change a little bit of background here. Okay. Maybe I'll choose some very light background. Yes. So you can change the background of slicer. Of course, we have used this properties before, so we know how to use it. So this is how you can change the properties of your slicer. Okay, so we have seen how to add a slicer. We have seen how to link a visual to the slicer, and also we have seen how to delink using edit interaction, how to remove the interaction from a visual to the slicer. Okay, so this is it. We'll now move to the next topic. Okay, so now we're going to look at how to plot a Gauss chart. A Gauss chart is an important visualization chart in BI, in business intelligence and performance management. The Gauss chart, which we'll see in some time, shows the minimum, maximum, and current value against the target value. So this allows business leaders and the managers to understand the gap between the current and the target stage, which allows them to do course correction if required. So as we have seen, we need 4 metric to plot Gauss chart. Your current value, the minimum value, which is mostly 0, the maximum value, and the target value. So this is important chart type, and knowledge of building this chart in Power BI will improve your analytics and BI capabilities. So let's see how do we plot a Gauss chart. So as usual, first we'll go and look for the Gauss chart on our visualization chart here. So Gauss chart is here, you see, and I double click on it. And probably I will adjust this little bit. Now I go and I expand the table from which we need data. Okay. So this is also taking from, okay. So here also we're taking data from income. So this will be linked to the slicer. Okay, that's good. We can change the Gauss chart content with the help of slicer. So first we'll go and add the values here. As I said, we have 4 values here: value, actual value, which we want to display. The minimum value, we will leave it blank because anyway we want it to start from 0. Maximum value, in this case, I'm going to create a new measure, which will be sum of 3 years data. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to create 3 Gauss chart, which talks about, which will show revenue, operating income, what all things we have here. So we have revenue, operating income, and gross profit for the year 2022, 2021, and 2020. And we'll have one new measure where we will add all these values so we can see the percentage contribution for the total of 3 years. Okay. So I'm going to select 2022 and drag it and the actual value. Now, right now it is taking 3.07 million, which is addition of all the values in the year 2022. This is not what we want actually. I'm going to create a new measure. So I'm going to say home, new measure here, and we'll get the formula. So I'm going to say last 3-year data, which is equal to, I'm going to use sum x. And in sum x, first we mention the table, right? So in this case, it is income. So I say income. And now I'm going to add the 3 columns here. So I'm going to say income 2022 plus income 2021 plus income 2020. And I'm going to hit enter. So new measure is created, which is last 3 years data. This should have been in income, isn't it? So we're back here. On minimum value, we will not have anything. As I said, will be 0. And this new metric that we created, new measure that we created, will drop it to maximum value. Okay, so we added to maximum value. So this is the sum of all the data for the last 3 years. So this is the sum of all the data for last 3 years. This got added to balance sheet, but anyway, this is pointing to income data. So shouldn't be a problem. You can actually come and check the revenue here. Revenue of 2021 was 572, right? So this is doing good. Okay, so let's come back to the Gauss and then target. Okay, let's say we put target here. So this is the gap between target and the actual. Now our data is ready. We will copy and paste 3 times and we will point it to 3 different years. So I'm going to take this, Control C, Control V, Control V. Okay. Now we will go and change the actual value. So from 2022, we'll change it to 2021. From here, we will change it to 2020. Okay, great. And we are comparing this revenue with same constant value. In your case, if you have a different target, you can change this as well. So now we have seen the plot, the Gauss plot, where we are using to display revenue for last 3 years. You can select operating income. Now it shows you the operating income for last 3 years. Awesome. Now let's go and make some edits. Let's go and make the visualization. We'll make the visualization proper now. So I'm going to select this and then go to chart visualization, and I can choose the color. So target color is orange, fill color is blue. So I think blue looks good. It matches to the bar graph as well. And if you want to change anything like minimum, you can change it, or go to general and look at the properties here. Height, width, position is all fine. Okay, let's make some changes to the effect. So background is black, and so you don't see the background here because our theme is also black. So let's make it some change to it. Let's make it some gray or something so that we are able to see it. Yes. So the background we have changed, and now it becomes gray. And we will change the background for all the three here. So let's say we go to general, effects, background, and here too we will say background. Perfect. Everything else looks good. We can change the label here, data label, right? Or if you want to switch it off, you can switch it off, or you can switch it on. Okay, target label. Target anyway, we don't have it except the first one. So we can switch it off. Callout value. Okay, so we can keep it. Okay, and we can change it to one decimal point. So we will change it by adding one decimal point here. Same thing we'll do for this. We'll make it one decimal point. Here also we'll make it one decimal point. Looks good. Shall we change the label here? Title. Okay. So title for first one should be year 2022. For second, we'll change it year 2021. For third, we will change it year 2020. Yep, I think we have done well. So we'll stop here, and now we will move to the next visualization. Now let's add one more visual to it. So in this case, I'm planning to add a stacked bar chart. So let's go to visuals, and we'll select stacked bar chart. Oops, we should replace the existing one. So I'm going to do Control Z, click it outside, and then click on stacked bar chart again. Okay, so this is the stacked bar chart. I'm going to pull it a little down here so that we have some gap between the previous visual and the new one. Okay, and here I want to display 2022 data, and so 2022 data I have put here, and now I'm going to add this annual data here. So we got operating income because this is being controlled by the slicer. Now, let's say I go here and I remove the connection of the slicer. So I go to click on slicer and then go to format, edit interaction, and I'm going to make it null. So I don't want this bar graph to be impacted by slicer. And now I go and I remove it from the slicer here. I click on none. So this is now delinked from the slicer. Good. So these are the metric. I don't want to display all the metrics. So I'll go and I'll choose the one that I want to display. Here I want to display cost of goods sold, revenue, and gross profit. So I'm going to say deselect all. And then first I want revenue to appear. So I'm going to go and select revenue. Then cost of goods sold. Cost of goods sold. See, it should be here somewhere. So revenue minus cost of goods sold is your gross profit. I can click on gross profit here. So this is anyway calculated based on that. So yes, we have added the bar graph here. Now this text is getting overlapped here. But if I click on revenue here, you get revenue. And if I select the cost of goods sold, it is becoming blank here. All these are from same table, so these are linked. Okay, because we have not added cost of goods sold here, so that's why it's not appearing here. So what I'll do is I'll click on revenue here, click on this graph, and I don't want this to impact this bar graph. I don't want this to impact the slicer. I don't want this again to impact the KPI that we have created. So I'm going to deselect all, bring this KPI down because I'm not able to see the none there. And then I'm going to click here and see this, make it none. So now this KPI, this bar graph and slicer are not linked. But of course, this data is linked. So if I click on revenue, everything is fine. Cost of goods sold. See, these things are not impacted, but this did get impact. This got impact because we do not have cost of goods sold here, right? But that's okay. I want it to be displayed like this. So bar graph is showing all three metric, but only bar graph is linked to this Gauss plot. Okay, because rest of the things are controlled by the slicer here. Okay, now let's look at the properties of this. These are the properties of the bar graph that we added. I'm going to hide it anyway. Let's come back to the format. Okay, so you have x-axis. Let's say I don't want x-axis. I don't want y-axis as well. Okay, or let's have y-axis so that we know what we are looking at. Okay, bars, colors you can change here. Let me add darker blue. Okay, the spacing, category width. Now data labels is off here. So if you make it appear, the values will appear on the bar. So I'm going to switch on data label here. Plot background, if you want to change anything, you can add image. So I don't want to add any image for now. So let me not do anything here. Now I go to general properties. This is the text that is appearing. I'm going to remove it. I'm going to totally remove it because the title is same here, year 2022. So I don't have to duplicate it. I'm going to switch it off. So we don't have title here. Okay. Now properties is all fine. Effects, background, shadow is all fine. Header icon is all good. Okay, let it be all on. So cool. But we have one challenge here. The text is getting wrapped up. Okay, we don't want to wrap the text. Instead, we can change the font size of it. So we'll go to visual, we'll go on to the y-axis, and we'll reduce the size here. So this is the minimum we have, and still it's not appearing well. What about changing the area here? Okay, so let's try to increase the area width such that, yes, so now all this text is appearing perfectly fine. So 40% area width is fine. So 40% goes to the text and 60% of the width goes to the plot. So now if you see, if I drag this bar graph, so now this works for all the 3 years. Now since it's a stack chart, we can add other year data also to this. So now it's already representing 2022. I'm going to select 2021. So see, it is giving us 2021 data. Now we'll add 2022 also to this. So I'm going to hide now visualizations, filter, and also the fields here. So this is how our dashboard is now looking like. So we have completed our visualization based on this theme, see the big picture. So generally the metric that we use for visualizing the big picture is the cards, right? So in this example, we have created 5 cards. So let me adjust this properly. Now you should be able to visualize all the 5 cards. We created cards which represents the important metric for the business. Now, let's say company is tracking the revenue and its revenue target. So it tells us what is the current revenue versus what was the goal, what was the target, right? So current revenue is $572K and target was 560. So we have gained 2.28%. Okay, so this is called KPI card. So KPI visualization. So we added KPI visualization along with the cards. Then we created a bar graph which represents one single metric, which is again important. So it could be revenue. So in this case, what we saw was that along with revenue, margin, along with revenue, cost of goods sold, gross profit, and operating income. These were also important. So we added a slicer with these 4 metric, and to display these values, we added a bar graph. Then we added what is called as Gauss plot. What you see here is called Gauss plot. So we also created 3 Gauss plot for 3-year metric, 22, 21, and 20. And these Gauss plots are also linked to the slicer. Slicer would link all the data which is from the same table. Example, this KPI dashboard is also from the same table, but we broke that link. Then towards the end, we added a stacked bar chart, single plot to represent all 3 years data. So this was also linked to the slicer, which we removed it. And here you can see the revenue. You can click on this data to show the specific set of values. Okay, so this is how our dashboard is looking after performing. This is how the dashboard is looking like after adding all these metrics. So with that, we come to end of this visualization. We'll stop here and let me save it first, and then we'll end it here.